Okay, so there's a real fundamental element of my track that's missing, which is the drums. So once I had a sort of bass and string part in place, I really had to start thinking about what I was going to do with the drums. So start with the kick drum, it's usually where I start. And having listened to a lot of grime, I noticed the kicks, it's not really busy, it's kind of just punctuating what the bass is doing. So actually, if you see here, if I put my bass MIDI next to my kick drum MIDI, you can see that they are just rhythmically doing the same thing. And that's because I just want my kick drum to punctuate what my bass is doing. And I don't want the two fighting against each other. I want them working together to make that really punchy low end. So if I solo my kick drum and my bass, found a kick drum sound that I didn't hate, didn't get obsessed with it, but just something I didn't hate. And then again, I felt like there was something missing from the kick, so I again found a second kick drum sample and blended the two together. So you can hear basically your punchy kind of low end mixed with a distorted kick. So again, using two samples to get the sound that I was after, and then mixed with the bass. Really punchy. The second element of the drums, I think, was the snare. Now I noticed in grime the snare's not as important as maybe it is in other sorts of music. I work a lot in rock music, and the snare is almost the main element of the drums, maybe along with the kick. But I decided to pop in just like a halftime snare to just give that head bobbing feel that I'd noticed in a lot of tracks. So if we just listen to the kick and snare together. Very simple. Almost sounds ridiculous on its own, but when you start to hear it in context with everything else, it starts to come together. Let's just have a little look, because there's something interesting going on the snare. Let's have a look. So again, I've used two samples. This first snare sound, I've got a couple of effects on. So it's quite a boring, just a rock kit snare. It's obviously, I just auditioned a lot of sounds. And again, I wasn't doing this in solo mode. I was listening to my whole track and settled on that sample. But again, I felt it was boring. I think I put distortion on it again. A lot more interesting. And then I felt the distortion brought out a lot of reverb, which I liked, but I felt it went on for too long. And I actually just wanted to cut it short, and I used a gate to do this. So a gate will just filter out within a threshold any sound that you don't want. So basically this gate is shut at the moment, and this red or orange color here is basically saying the gate is shut. And you'll notice when the snare comes through it, it will open up. See that? And then with this release time and a few other settings, you can change how quickly you want that gate to shut. So if I just bypass it, we'll hear what it's doing. So can you hear there's like a reverb tail that I just wanted to get rid of. So when I put the gate on, you hear it disappear. So that's how I got that snare sound. And then I think I decided to mix. I just felt it needed a bit more punch, so I think I ended up using this sample as well, snare 2. You hear that snare sound's just got a bit more attack to it, so it attacks a lot quicker. And then when you blend the two together, I've got a nice big fat snare sound that just helps with that head bob vibe of the drums. If we put the kick and the snare together, Not necessarily very grimy, which is possibly, if I was to criticise myself on this track, I would say that that element is not massively known to grime, that snare sound. But I think I just went with it, and I just felt it brought out the head bobbing feel a lot more. Now, one thing I've noticed a lot in grime is like a rolling snare. So if I just show you what this is doing, we've got our main kick and snare. Did you hear that? So this rolling snare, it's quite a small sounding snare, but it's very busy, and I guess that's why it's small, is that if it was too big, like the other snare sound I've got, it would just sound ridiculous. But I found this sample that worked well, and it just, again, punctuates out every now and then. It's really interesting. So we'll hear that all together in a minute, but I guess the next important bit of the drums was the clap. So as I said at the beginning, I noticed in grime there's a lot of clap samples and a lot of crazy clapping going on. So I had a go. Again, I didn't do this in solo mode. I was trying to write it with my string riff, and I came up with this clap sample. So you can hear now the beat, the groove of it is starting to come together. The claps fill in all those gaps between the kick and the snare, and start to bring this groove that's maybe a bit more fitting with grime. And then the small snare just punctuates in between and completes the loop. And then here, finally, I just chucked in a little hi-hat to sort of complement the claps and sort of bring some more rhythmical ideas. And that is my main drum loop. So now we'll start thinking about how we use all this together to make ourselves a beat.